Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Luiz Pereira da Silva, and thank you for the opportunity to participate, even if only virtually, to this event. I thank the organizers, the Academia das Ciências de Lisboa, Banco de Portugal, and the Robert Triffin International Associations. 80 years provides a long enough perspective. We all know that the Bretton Woods system had an essential role for restoring global macro-financial stability in a period of great financing needs for post-World War II reconstruction. It functioned as a global public good. Yet, the Bretton Woods system ultimately failed due to the overextended US dollar liabilities over the rest of the world and excessive balance of payments deficits. We know all that, but let's not focus on why it failed, but rather on what lessons can be given us today from its decades of success. That is important because we are facing today a bigger but similar challenge: the need for global macro-financial stability, the need for great amounts of short-term liquidity, and long-term financing for the transition to net zero. A new green Bretton Woods idea is not entirely new. The spirit of Bretton Woods is to provide public goods, liquidity and international currency, long-term loans, and institutions forming an international monetary system. It was put in practice by the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. So first, 80 years later, we need a new green and fair Bretton Woods. First, we need to construct a consensus around a narrative for fighting climate change. It requires global multilateral urgent collective action. It is a global negative externality. I called it a green swan, a recognized market failure that no single region, country, actor in society can address alone. It needs a significant amount of financial resources, around 2% of global GDP in investment for the transition. It requires help in developing countries that do not have these resources to finance their transition. It needs regional and multilateral agreements to use both existing funding, public and private, but also innovative sources of global financing, and it can be organized into a global framework. The principles of the Paris Accord, in the Conference of the Parties, the actions of the G20. Now, second, we need a roadmap laying out the concrete elements of such a new Bretton Woods. An institutional framework. Start using existing institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, the system of regional multilateral development banks, the alliance of public banks under the Finance in Commons initiative, the many regional monetary, trade and financial agreements and arrangements among groups of countries. And then also agree on creating a special fit-for-purpose agency or institutional framework, a vehicle for channeling resources and guaranteeing their sustainability and value over the medium-long term. Financing. Start using existing resources and existing commitments, the MDBs, the private alliances such as the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, to begin implementing existing plans, and then enlarge the scope of resources that can be mobilized to leverage more resources, international taxation, new issuances of SDRs, enhance the issuance of green financing and bonds. Then how would the new green and fair Bretton Woods work? To become operational and in whatever institutional configuration, the process is quite straightforward. More green projects making the transition to net zero need to be financed in a sustainable way, primarily in poor developing countries. In addition, some poor regions of the world need insurance against extreme weather events and the financing of damage and repairs. At their inception, green projects in developing countries are profitable but present a perceived financial risk for investors in addition to a liquidity risk. So they need both long-term financing and short-term money, the very essence of the Bretton Woods logic in post-World War II in Europe and the world. Therefore, the suggestion is to work on the liquidity front. The G7 could reallocate all or part of their current SDR holdings to poor developing countries that have committed national determined contributions objectives with pledges to net zero, and well-formulated strategies detailed in their country climate development reports. Now, while SDRs are not a currency, they can be used to mobilize hard currency liquidity to launch and pay for the current expenditures of a green project. The regional monetary arrangements of central banks in Africa, the Americas, Asia, and Europe can also contribute to short-term liquidity funding. More liquidity can also come from the proceeds of regional regulated carbon trading systems. Finally, and in addition, a regular inflow from innovative international taxation mechanisms could be brought into the flow of funds. On the long-term financing front, developing countries' green bonds issuances, as well as other climate risk-related financial instruments like cat bonds, need a credit enhancement feature that would make them investable by large asset managers, pension funds, and even central banks of developed countries. For that, they need to be at least investment grade, and therefore it requires a guarantor for future repayments. The guarantor, the sovereign or an institution, could provide this credit enhancement for these green bonds to become above investment grade rating. The guarantors could be the multilateral system, the fixed alliance, the old Bretton Woods institutions. And to conclude, a new green and fair Bretton Woods is needed to restore a truly multilateral monetary system that deals with the biggest collective action problem that we have for social, economic, and political stability in this 21st century, the existential threat of climate change. We need out-of-the-box thinking and creative financial engineering, innovations, private-public partnerships, new green guarantees, more liquidity and long-term loans, grants and funds as the beginning for a green and fair new Bretton Woods. Thank you very much.